Okay, back again. Let's try this again. You don't stream for a few weeks and things kind of get switched around. There was an update, all this kind of stuff. I'm just going to double check that the sound is working okay, and then we'll get going here. Man, craziness. Okay, just give me 2 seconds. There's awkward silence in the first few minutes. One day I'm going to get this figured out and be all professional, but until then, we'll just muddle our way through it. Okay, back. Okay, so it seems to be working. Okay, so it's been a few weeks, and the reason for that is, as usual, search and rescue callouts and training, which is why I've decided I'm going to change these streams to Mondays, and I think it's going to work better for everybody. I don't think anybody's around on the weekend anyways. I've been checking my analytics, and it appears that most people aren't tuning in on Sundays anyways, and I'm just kind of talking to myself for an hour. But they're watching it over the course of the week. So I figured maybe if I switch it to Mondays, we'll have a little bit better chance of having some people being able to drop by, slacking off in the afternoon at work or whatever. Plus, I am on call today, and I'm on call almost every Monday during the day, but the chances of a call out are pretty slim, and I think it's just better for everyone. So Mondays it's going to be from now on. That said, I've got to stop saying that said. That's, if anybody catches me doing that, get on the chat and tell me stop saying that being said or that said. I was watching my old streams, and you catch yourself doing the same things over and over again. So let's start out with some news and some developments. A user by the name of Egon on the RPF contacted me a week ago or so, and gave me a thought. And the Egon owns the book, the costuming book, the Star Wars costuming book, and said that when he looks at it, it claims in the book that the episode 4 and the episode 6 holsters, the bottom part of the holster, are actually the same holster, and just the belt was different. I was a little skeptical at first, just because from my research it looks as though they're different. But he has presented me with some fairly good evidence to the contrary, and I think that I'm coming around. What I want to check is, he says that I don't have access to the book, so this is a bit difficult for me, but what I'd like to check is, I have photos, reference photos, where on the restraining strap that keeps the DL-44 in, there's a black mark. His theory, I guess, is that there's some wrinkles that are exactly the same in the strap part of the holster where it connects to the buckles. I tend to not like going too much off wrinkles, because even if you have different, I mean, if you look at two pairs of shoes, they tend to wrinkle in the same spot depending on the wearer. So wrinkles are not an amazing, thing that are like a point of reference for me, but markings are. And I'm trying to get a hold of the photos, because I think on the reference photo there's a little black mark on the restraining strap. And if that same mark is in the exact same spot, it's almost impossible that that would be replicated by the person that made it. So it's quite likely that that would be the same. And if it is the case, that's an amazing find, because not only is it strange that it skipped episode 5, and showed up in episode 6, but it makes a huge difference in this pattern because it means that I can essentially throw out all of what I have for the holster for episode 6 and just replicate episode 4. The other thing that Egon was looking at was that on the cap of the holster near the bottom, it's really, really difficult to see the stitches. Egon feels that there are no stitches. He figures it may be glued. I'm not convinced of that. I think from the reference photos that I have, it looks as though there are some stitches there. It's just maybe over time the holster's been kind of crushed and moved and stuff, and it's just they're not as clear as they used to be. It's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell. Episode 4 and 6, if they are the same holster, there's lots of reference photos of episode 6 holster, so it's easy to check that. Episode 4, not so much. There's not a lot of reference out there, so it's hard to compare the two. So if we can figure out that the episode 4 and 6 holsters are actually the same holster, bottom part, not the top, then we can go on the episode 6 reference photos and see if we can see any of those stitches, because I don't see why there would be no stitches on the 4 and then all of a sudden they'd be on episode 6 ones. So that's a little bit of an interesting, cool thing that Egon's brought to my attention. Me and Egon are looking into it a little bit more, researching it, seeing if we can figure out something. But that could be a nice development in this project. As well, let's do this. I'm going to take this off for a sec. Close this down. I was looking around in the last week when I was doing some work on the project, and there's a user on the Rebel Legion by the name of Captain Solo 77, and it's an old post, and I didn't even see it. I was searching for something completely different, and some of the photos popped up in Google, and I kind of followed them through to Captain Solo's thread there, and if I can find them, I've got 1,000 of them open here, so bear with me. Here we go. It was an old post. It was from 2016, I believe, but Captain Solo posted these two photos in the start this. Let's get some music for you guys. Captain Solo posted these two photos, which show the back of the episode 7 buckle, which is really cool. Because as far as I know, these are really the only two photos available out there, and they're blurry and they're tough. But there might be the ability to find these in the Blu-ray. But as you can see, it looks very much like. Well, it's interesting to me because it looks very much like the episode 4 version. However, there seems to be maybe a bit of a shape difference, and this could be the angle, obviously, but it looks like this might come down further than the top. So that's kind of an interesting thing. At least it gives me a general direction of where to go with this back buckle. Up until now, it was just a complete guess to me what this was. The other interesting thing, too, is you can't see much of this because of the blurriness, but you can see there's definitely 2 buttons here. There may be 2 buttons here. However, there may not be, because, well, it's hard to say here too. So there may only be 4 buttons instead of the 6. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, it's not, it makes sense on this holster. It's been very minimalized in many ways. Lots of, like you can see the extra pouch is gone here. The disc is gone here. So it would make sense that there would be less buttons on there. But nonetheless, good development. I have to thank Captain Solo 77 for finding these photos and posting them, because that's going to make a huge deal in getting that holster completed. Now the next thing, let's go back here. I'm going to take this off. Ooh, sorry, actually. Okay, so here, the next thing is that a user by the name of KMan on the Rebel Legion has created a thread here, and I've got it up here so you guys can sort of see it. KMan is comparing the Anovos and the Todd's Costumes holster, and well, we'll get into the Greeblies later, but I just kind of wanted to show you guys because KMan's done an excellent job here of going through and you know, just really going into detail with these two. You know, you can sort of see here Todd's nice and laid out, Anovos nice and laid out. You can just really see the differences, and he's gone into you know, great detail with the differences between the two. It's quite interesting. What I found interesting about it is partly it's just, you know, it's an interesting thing to see. It's always nice to see two different vendor offerings and see how each one has a different take on that. You know, where they go accurate, where they take liberties, where they you know, where they get it right, where they get it wrong. So that's it, and it's interesting, especially if you're considering purchasing one of these. Now, I'm going to say, before I go any further, these are both excellent offerings as far as quality and you know, workmanship and stuff. They're great holsters. From what I can tell here, they're put together well, and for the money you're going to spend, you're going to get your money's worth. I'm going to say that. However, as a sort of a disclaimer, however, what I'm going to also say is, if you're considering these two holsters, or if you're the one offering these two holsters, Todd, I've purchased things from you before. You do excellent work. I'm not trying to knock you here, but both of these really are lacking in many ways for screen accuracy, if that's what you're going for. If you're looking for the most screen accurate holsters you can, these are not it. And I can give you a couple of quick examples if we work through. Let's go up to the top here and we can work through. First of all, you can see right off the bat, the droid collars are, you know, this, let me just quickly double check here my notes. Okay, so yeah, we have basically the same holster, right? So let's, you know, basically, what do we got here? The episode 5. Okay, so let's look at these. The droid collars and that are just inconsistent, right? The pouches here, let me just, sorry, I gotta make sure I've got the right ones here. Okay, Anovos. Alright, I believe this is the Anovos one. This is a much better pouch than this one. This one is completely inaccurate. It's too big. It's too, the shape is wrong. This is much better to where it should be. The buttons are not entirely in the correct spots, like the spacing. Just, it's close, but quite. You can see with this pouch here, it's sloppy, right? There's too much space here. This one is much more in line with what it should be. The pouch spacing here and here are, this is a little bit more accurate than this one. There's not that much space there for this on the Todd's one. I believe this is Todd's. If I get these mixed up, I'm sorry, but you can also, if you get into here to the pouches, these are just wrong. Todd's is actually much more accurate. The Anovos one is totally inaccurate. They should not go up this far. They should cut about there like Todd's does. So that's quite bad. Todd's also, it looks like Todd's may have improved his stitching, because before Todd didn't do the correct stitching. How it sort of works is, like, if you can sort of see it here, the last stitch goes down and then comes up again, and you can, it doesn't, well, it looks like Todd might have not changed it. Todd's looks like it kind of cuts across. That's not what it does. Let's kind of keep going here a little bit. This is wrong on all counts. These are not stitched, like factory stitched like this. These were hand stitched. One 1 there's not all this there. We have reference photos of, they're more like this one here. So I believe this is the Todd's one. This is bad, and this is why if you look at Todd's, his stitching is incorrect because of the way he's trying to stitch it all in one thing. It's just not right. So that's inaccurate. This is more accurate. Unfortunately, the Anovos one goes too far to the top, which makes it completely inaccurate. If you look at these two stitchings here, I have no idea what they're doing there. It looks like they were totally drunk. So, let's see here. These are fairly accurate in terms of the shape. There are some issues with the two, but I'm not going to go into those right now because there's a lot of them there. So, like for example, these rivets, it's just not. It's really strange the way that they've decided to do these two. The buckles, KMan here has mentioned that the buckles on one of them is quite thin, and these ones are quite thick. It's really quite. It's weird because if you look at the actual ones, they look quite thin, but they're sorry, they look like they could be quite thick, but they actually are quite thin, and I don't think they used very thick metal. I think it's probably somewhere in between these two, personally. I have notes that I can double check on there, but either way, it doesn't really matter. It's going to look roughly the same at a distance, so don't be too, you know, you can see the difference here, and yeah. Okay. Anyway, I'm not going to spend too much more time on this, but I wanted to sort of show you this and let you know that KMan here, there's I'm assuming this is KMan. Before he's choking you or whatever he's doing. Just did an excellent job of going through and giving nice high quality photos of the differences between the two. And I think that if you're in the market for one of these two, or if you just want to sort of double check yours against, you know, some of these, this is a great thread to check out. Later on, KMan goes into some more detail, and then eventually into the Greeblies, which we'll get into in a sec, which actually is a good segue. If we want to get into the Greeblies. So let's close this down for 2 seconds. Because let's start with, well, today is Greeblies. That's what we're going to talk about today. And so how I'm going to do this is I'm going to just sort of work through episodes 4 to 7 and kind of give you guys a bit of background on some of the Greeblies, what we know, what we don't know, what I know and what I don't know, in the hopes that you guys can take this information and either see if you can, you know, if you want to take the initiative and go out and find more information, that would be excellent. If you want to, if you know information that I don't know or that I'm forgetting to mention, let me know, because the one thing with this holster project is that I am fairly confident with most of my research for all the holsters. When it comes to Greeblies, I have like 10% or 20% of the information, and the rest is all just totally guesswork and just other people's interpretations. So I'm not too happy with where we're at as a community with the Greeblies. I think that there's a lot of information that we could get, but until we kind of work together, or somebody can give me some you know, sweet hookups and, you know, get me into the Lucas archives, I don't know what else we're going to do. So let's start with episode 4, and let's start with the Sparklets canisters. Now, if you're not aware, and this is what today we're going to kind of go over, is that the Sparklets canisters, now I can call them canisters, but Sparklets actually calls them bulbs. As you can see here, bulbs. This is from the Sparklet site. They have a history of their products. I could probably close my face off here. They have a history of products that you can see what things look like throughout, you know, history of their product line. And essentially what these are is that for some reason, these, I'm assuming that these are water you know, you put water in there and then it injects these CO2 cartridges into the water and basically makes sparkling water. That's, you know, today you can just go buy it in the store, but for some reason in 1970s that was like the fad, and so people love doing it, and that's what they are. So how it worked was that you would put these bulbs into this thing here, and then you would, you know, press it. It would break the seal here at the top, inject all the CO2 into your water, and then you would have these fizzy drinks. Simple enough. That's what they are. You can see here that there are different bulb sizes throughout the different years that they were in production. Size C here is the one that, if you're looking for these, size C is the one you're going to look for. And obviously the painted green one. There's a raw one here that I've got a few of, but you know, and you could probably paint it if you wanted to, but the green ones are the way to go. And the green ones are also slightly different shape, as you might not be able to tell on the screen there, but you can sort of see this curve and this curve are slightly different, but they're close enough that if you could only get this one, that would be fine. You can see here that I have these are the ones that I have, and I think I'm -2 of these because I sold them to somebody. But you can see that even within this was out of 2 boxes, and you can see that even within there's lots of variation in terms of the painting and you know, how they were kind of cast, I guess, and made. Some of them are a little wonky, some of them, you know, it's just weird. So there's a lot of variation, but you know, not something that you would notice. I'll just mention this once today, that these are the sparklet canisters that I have, and anybody who becomes a patron of mine for $30 or more will get one of these. Just so if you're looking in the market for that, and you know, it's probably going to cost you less, and you get all the other stuff as well. You get the pattern and things like that. So if you're interested, go check that out on my Patreon there. So these are the sparklets canisters, and I think I have, you can sort of see here, that's what we're talking about, and these are episode 4, and that's, you know, it's the only place you'll find these ones, the green ones. So something to keep in mind. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so yeah, these are, I mean, we know what these are. They're available to get online still. They're not terribly expensive depending on where you find them. The ones that I got here that you see on the screen are, I was lucky. The person selling them in the UK had no idea what they were, just had a bunch of boxes full of them and decided to sell them. And the price, I think I paid something like 20 euros for the entire thing. However, it ended up costing me a whole lot more in the end, because if you live anywhere outside of Europe, you can't ship these with CO2 in them, and it takes special shipping to get them out of UK, all this kind of nonsense. So in the end, it ended up costing me, you know, after exchange rates and all this kind of stuff, quite a lot more. But they are available if you can get them for a good cost. If you find them and people know what they are, it's like anything Star Wars related, whether it be, you know, the flash hiders or any of that kind of stuff, you're going to pay tons and tons of money if people know what these are. So, you know, if you can get them, great. But anyway, you know, not to ramble on too much, but this is what they are. They're sparklets bulbs. I've got a few if you want. You can get them online. The only thing to be sure of is to make sure that you get the right years, because some of them have different greens, just slightly different, that don't look right. There's a kind of more of a neon green. Now, if you go to, let's head over to KMan's here. Just gonna quickly go past all this. This is the offering right now from Anovos. They've obviously cast these, you know, and then mass produced them. They've stamped their name in there, I guess. Sure, thanks. And the color's completely wrong. So if you get these ones, you're going to have to, if you're looking for accuracy, you're going to have to repaint them. It's just, this green is completely off. It's more of a kind of bluish, you know, kind of green, which is nothing like this one, as you can see. I mean, this isn't the best photograph, but anyway. So that's the current offering. There's a few other ones online that offer them, and you know, they're all resin versions. If you haven't heard before, for those who kind of donate to this project, I'm going to be offering 3D printable versions, so you can print as many as you want from a place like Shapeways or any of the online 3D printing ones, at whatever quality you deem. You can get metal ones made if you wanted. I may offer resin ones in the future, you know, because I wouldn't mind getting my mold making skills out, you know, but for now, that's where we're at. Okay, so let's go on. The next are these white boxes. Now, this is what I'm talking about here, these sort of white plugs. And I have another photo here if I can. Just bear with me 2 seconds to find it. There needs to be a better way to do this. Finding them after pain. Come on. Here we go. So these white boxes, now we don't know what they are. No clue. They look, you know, they're called relays, they're called all these kind of stuff. I don't know. I haven't been able to find anything in all my research that would tell me at all what they would be. Just, I'm sure there's somebody out there who works on cars or airplanes or something along those lines that knows exactly what these are, but I don't. From what I can tell, I thought at first they might be custom made, right? You know, maybe in the shop they were just like, yeah, let's throw some, you know, Greeblies together and make something kind of cool looking. And I would think that normally, other than the fact that on this photo here and a little bit here, you can see that there's actually writing on the side. That leads me to believe that these are actually a product of some kind. They're something made for another purpose that just happened to fit in these pouches. And we just don't know what they are. Maybe somebody knows what they are, but I don't know what they are. So we're kind of stuck with those. Now I want to go back over to the Rebel Legion for a sec, to KMan's thing. This is the Anovos offering. And, you know, I have to actually say they look fairly accurate. Now, a bit of a side tangent with Anovos. They claim on their website that they've actually had the ability to look at all the stuff from the Lucas archives. I don't know if that's true or not. They may, because they have the licenses, actually were given opportunity to see these, but it could just be marketing, right? I mean, because Anovos, I would believe that if all the other things that Anovos were offering were totally screen accurate, but there's a lot of things that are not screen accurate with Anovos, including color, size, and a lot of the stuff in the holster. So it leaves me to believe that they may have had access to it, or they're just doing the same thing I'm doing, which is just working through details, and they just, you know, happen to have better access or something like that when it was on costume or display or something. But from what I can tell, these are pretty good. And one of the things you can sort of see, KMan's got that same photo here. One of the things that you'll notice when you look at a lot of people's holsters, and I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about, you know, common inaccuracies that people do, is people tend to make them way too big. They look really big, obviously, when you get them in here. They, you know, that looks huge, but the reality is these pouches are really small, and you'll see that in the episode 5 holster, how small they actually are. So you know, it gets, people just get them too big. They go down too far. I mean, these look great. You know, I'm not going to deny that these custom ones that people have made look really nice, but they don't fit, right? So what people end up doing is making the pouches way too huge, and you know, it all just throws the whole holster off. So these Anovos ones, you know, I gotta give them credit. They've kind of made them look pretty good. What I don't like about the Anovos ones, this is just me personally, I don't like this big giant Anovos on there. I mean, I get it. They're trying to sell their product and stuff, but you know, come on. This is in a pouch already. You know that you've purchased an Anovos one. You're not advertising to anybody unless you pull it out and be like, hey, check it out. But, you know, come on. Just make it look Star Wars, right? You know, put some kind of things on here. Make it look kind of cool. Like, get your Anovos nonsense off there. If you want to put it on the bottom or whatever. It's the same with this. Like, I mean, okay. It's marketing. Whatever. You got to do what you got to do. But I just don't like that on there. You can't see it, obviously, when it's in the holster, but it's just not something I like. Anyway, side tangent. These are pretty cool. They look fairly accurate, all things considered. But until we know what these really are, I don't know. We're kind of stuck. I'm going to ask a couple of people that I know that are really into cars, like old cars, and I'm going to see if that's... But I'm not sure if this is a car thing. I've never seen anything on a car like this. I don't know cars that well, but looks like it could be more like airliner boats or something, some other kind of form of vehicle. So that's sort of episode 4 with the Greeblies. We're going to go into the droid collar and the what do you call it, the disc a little bit later on in the stream, but those are the Greeblies for episode 4. So let's go to episode 5. Now we know a little bit about episode 5. Now let's talk about this. Okay, so let's get these. So if you're unaware, are we? One. Why is it that they're so easy to see when you're... That's not it. Ignore that. Oh man, it's so annoying. Okay, well I'll come across it eventually, I guess. Had it here 2 seconds ago. Twice. Okay, so anyway, if you're unaware, we're talking about the oh man, it's dumb. Give me 2 seconds. I'll just go and find it here. Here. Okay, so what we're talking about is this here. And this is what this is it's a half of a carburetor from a model kit called the Visible V8 engine from Revell. Now, this model kit, I'll get that out of the way for 2 seconds. You guys see what we're talking about? It's here. Okay. So, this model kit is still available. This is the current box here. This is the one I have. It's worth purchasing if you've got other Han Solo things you want to make, because it also comes with the parts, a couple of the parts for the DL44. However, here's the old version. Looks like from the 50s, maybe, or 60s for some reason. And this is the 1977 version. And the 1977 version introduced some parts that I don't believe were in this older kit. I mean, most of the parts are still here. This is the carburetor here part. These two, I think, and somewhere in there, and they two fit together, and they sandwich. The 1977 kit introduced a bunch of parts that are no longer available in the kit. So it's one of the most annoying things is that when you can actually buy this kit, but for some reason there's parts that are just not there. They don't have anything to do with the holster themselves. They're all DL44 parts for the, you know, I think it's the episode 5 blaster and maybe the episode 6 blaster, but they're not available in the current kit. So it's annoying because you kind of have to go and track down either vintage ones or you have to track down some resin copies. I just got a couple of resin copies myself from Boba Det on the RPF, who he got from somebody else. And I gotta look this guy up because he's done such good work and I keep totally screwing it up and not knowing his name. Anyway, if you can get a hold of this 1977 version, this is the kit that you need because it will have the correct parts that that you need for the DL44. If you don't care about the DL44 and it's not something, go out, order this online. You can get it. I think it's about 60 bucks, 60 or 70 bucks. It has the part you need in there and everything's good. So, and this is the part we're talking about. Now, that being said, I went out and bought this kit and I had my carburetor and everything was fantastic. And I decided, like, after looking at it, there was a molding defect in it. And, you know, I thought, okay, I'm going to contact Revell and just say, you know, I've got a molding defect in this part. If you have another one, I wouldn't, you know, mind if you could send me one. You know, I'll pay for it, whatever. They were awesome, completely and totally awesome, and sent me another one. However, when it arrived, I realized that the two were quite different in many different little subtle ways. I mean, this is a small part, so I mean, knowing, you know, seeing the differences are subtle, but I realize that there's different versions of this thing kicking around out there, and what I suspect is that if you know anything about injection molding or molding in general, you'll know that molds break down over time. It doesn't matter what kind of mold it is. After, you know, a certain amount of time, things get fuzzy, is what they call it, fuzzy, and that's because the details just start to erode away. And you'll see if you buy a Denix, Denix blasters are notorious for being fuzzy. They mass produce them so much, they don't redo the molds very often, and so you get a lot of curves that aren't sharp anymore, and a lot of issues with that. So what I suspect happened in this case was that over time, you know, if they started the original molds in the 60s or 50s even, and they pulled those molds out, eventually they'd have to go and redo the molds. Now, if you think about that, back in the day, you know, making these molds was not like now where you have CAD programs and stuff and you go and, you know, do all these kind of fancy prints and stuff like that. A lot of the way that those things were made back in the day was quite different. So, you know, it's expected that there's going to be slight changes. And I suspect there was also different parts in the world were using different molds, and, you know, they were good enough. You know, the average user wouldn't notice the difference. But, you know, for us who are stupid and crazy anal retentive about this stuff, notice the differences. And so I have a photo of the differences, but it's really difficult to see them. It's not really worth kind of showing you guys because you'd have to really look real close to sort of see them. But they're there. And so which one is more accurate? I actually believe that the one that I had replaced is more accurate. And I think what they have is they probably have a set of molds somewhere in Germany or the US where they've got that, and they just pull a bunch of them out of there for replacement parts. It's more crisp and it was fresher. You can sort of see that it was probably made quite recently. But the reality is it's the same part. The differences are so subtle that, you know, you just can't, unless you're like me, who now I know about it. You know. So that being said, though, I said it again. That being said, every time it's like a drinking game. It's gonna have to be every time I do that. I gotta do something stupid. So with all that, I've, as you can see here on my screen, I've gone through and I've documented this entire thing with a pair of calipers down to every. And the reason I did this obviously is because I want them 3D printed, and I could take a mold of this one obviously and just put resin versions out like Anovos does or whoever, a bunch of other people. But I want it 3D printed, so I wanted to make sure that somebody could go and model this, as well as these measurements are based off the one I believe are more accurate. So when you get the 3D models from me, they're based on the one that I think is more accurate. So that's kind of that's sort of the history of that we know. It's a part we know. You can still get it. Not a big deal. Lots of different people offer them. If we go back here to the Anovos one, you can see that KMan has compared the two. This is one out of the kit, and this is the Anovos one. You can see that the Anovos one has completely, for some reason, screwed up on the color. I don't know why they've done that. Anovos has also taken some liberties and closed off a lot of the details. You can see they've closed off the back. They've closed off the bottom. Here, closed that off. Not sure, or sorry, that's the side. I'm not sure why they did that. I mean, it's easier to mold, obviously. When you don't have to do all the undercuts and everything else. That's lazy to me. I would have done it, but I would have done the accurate one. But you can sort of see from a visual perspective, it's accurate. From a color and an actual, from the perspective of, let's see, they've cut. It's just not. And, who cares? If you don't care, who cares? It looks the same from here up, and that's really all that matters when you get it into the pouch. You only see from here up, right? So, I mean, all of this doesn't matter what this is. One thing I'm going to ask you guys, for those watching the stream later and those maybe watching now, do you care, how do I put this? Do you care about accuracy in like, okay, I'll put it this way. If you really want 100% accurate, I'm assuming you're going to go out and you're going to get one of the original carburetor pieces, right? If you are not so concerned with how of it being an actual genuine one, would you be interested in that being some have another sort of functionality? For example, this is just a off the top of my head example. What if that was a USB stick? Would that be of interest to you to have these Greeblies have dual functions? Maybe, for example, if you think about it from a cosplay perspective, like maybe you're at a convention or something like that, and this one stores extra SD cards for your GoPro or something. Would that be of interest to you if it kept the exact same look and feel, but it had extra sort of features in there? I asked that because I think, for me, I think that would be kind of fun. Like, obviously I want the original ones, but if I go out to cosplay in this, I'm not bringing all my original stuff. It's staying at home, and I'm going to put replicas in there. And if I'm going to put a replica in there, it'd be kind of cool if it had some sort of functionality. I mean, for fun's sake, but also because, for practical sake. So, anyway, think about that. And if it's something that's interest to you guys, let me know. And maybe I can think about offering, something that's kind of cool. I mean, there's lots of space in the back here. You could put little micro SD, those little, the GoPro size ones, SD cards in there, and have a bunch of extras and pull it out. Or it could be a USB stick to transfer your photos or whatever, right? It could be a charging device. I don't know. I mean, the white ones for the A New Hope one, the episode 4 could have, they could be charging. They could be extra batteries for your iPhone or whatever. Anyway, something to think about. But that's basically it. That's the carburetor. It's available, and you can put it in your episode 5 holster. So let's close that. Now that brings us to the plug. Trying to see if I bring this up. It's up for you guys. And there was had on the okay, well, you know what I'm talking about. Obviously, the plug in it's here. I just had a photo open. I don't know why I closed it. Okay, guess I'll have to do this. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so we're talking about this here. Now, this is something we don't know what it is. I mean, people, let's look at this for a sec. This is an XLR plug, and if you took this casing off here, you would get something very similar, I think, to this. You know, you got your 3 prongs, and you know, there's a little groove in here for whatever the case, whatever this actual functionality of this is. But that's what I believe this is an XLR plug. We have, you can sort of see the bottom here, and I think the bottom has some plugs as well, some female, and then there's male on the top here. I've seen a couple other reference photos that makes me believe there might be some holes in this, and I think I have some photos that I took at the Seattle exhibit that may show that as well. So it definitely is a plug of some kind. Problem is, it's next to impossible to figure out what plug. I mean, there are probably billions of plugs that have been produced since 1960, whatever, all the way to, you know, within the years that they were creating, you know, 80s, you know, 85 or whatever, within the years that they were creating this this holster, finding that exact one without any more detail would be next to impossible, unless there's somebody out there who has like a ridiculous amount of knowledge when it comes to like an audio file that just can look at this and say, yeah, that's a something something shloba blobba from whatever. Like, there's just no way that we're gonna know. If we go to back to KMan here, KMan's really helping us out today, so give props to KMan for the amount of work that he's done. This is the Anovos offering, and you know, not bad, right? Not too bad. It looks exactly like, kind of like it would be. Thing is, we don't know anything from this point to kind of this point, so you know, this could all just be, you know, whatever Anovos feels. However, it could be an actual thing. Now, if Anovos could pull this out of the holster and see what it was, this is what it was. And it looks like, if you kind of look at it, it looks like there was a, let's assume for a sec that this is actually based on a real XLR plug. It looks like this screw here was probably to keep the casing on, you know, and then this may have been added, or may have been just to keep it from coming up on the other side. If that's the case, then this is what this is. It's an XLR plug, and finding this one in the exact shape, if we can do that, I would love to know what this is. I would love to know what the original was for this. And we know the dates when it could be. It couldn't be after 1980, whatever. The fact that I don't know when episode 5 came out is a shame, and everybody should, you know, send me nasty emails. But you can kind of see here that it's available. I'm sure somebody can track this down in one way or another based on some of these images. But as far as that, that's all the information we have. There's no more information that any of us have that I can see on the internets that, you know, gives us any better indication. There's lots of different places that offer this, variations on this. Everybody's got a different take on how this looks underneath. I'm not completely sure that Anovos got this right, this little groove here. Based on the reference photos that I have, it doesn't look like it's symmetrical. So just something to sort of mull over. But that's what we are. That's where we're at with that. I think that's what we know, and it's nothing. So we have what we have. So let's move on then. Let's go to episode 6 now. The seat belts. I guess we're going to call those seat belts. That's not them, but a preview of what's coming. It's not it either. Oh, come on. Okay. And again, bear with me while I click on every single photo that I have open here. There we go. Okay, so what we're talking about here is these. For all intents and purposes, it's unknown what these are. I looked into this a little bit, and where I started out was I looked at seat belts from vehicles that may have been in the, you know, in the area at the time. Didn't really work out. I looked at various other belts and buckles that may have been on airplanes and things at the time. Didn't really sort of. What I did come across, and it's still a sort of a path I'm exploring, was I found that there was these clips that were on old. Basically, they're on old stretchers, kind of thing, and they would clip. The way that it would clip in would be kind of it was similar to how a seatbelt worked, but they're just slightly different. And a lot of the ones that I found looked very similar to that, but it wasn't definitive enough for me to say that's, you know, the direction to go in. So what we have here is essentially kind of another mystery. We've got what looks like a silver metal piece with these two kind of gold or copperish looking or I guess they're grommets in here, and then from then on we have no idea. I mean, we don't know what happens down here. There's no other information. If we go back to KMan here, and we go down, up, I guess it is, we can see what Anovos is offering, which is essentially a kind of mirrored version of basically what you can see on top. I'm not sure that this is true. I don't know what this is. It doesn't look. What is this? Who knows? But this is what we have available for our best guess. If anybody from Anovos happens to watch this, then, you know, you can set me straight on all of this, and this would be amazing. If you have access to this or had access to this, and you're like, yeah, dude, I was like, me and George Lucas were like throwing these things around Lucas Archives, and like, if you know, then tell me, because this would be amazing to know what this is, and how, and if this is actually mirrored like this. But I'm not going to go too much more detail into it, because in just in all honesty, we don't know what it is. I don't even know what to guess what this thing is. So with that, we'll just go right in here, because we're here now. We've got this little thing here, which, you know, people are calling the Lego bit. it's again, you know, who knows what this is. To me, this is more model kit. It looks like something that probably came out of a model kit, like with the carburetor. You know, unless somebody can say, oh yeah, no, that's you know, a blah 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 engine block off a, you know, P51, you know, Type C, whatever, you know, because they've built this a ton of times and they just know what this is. Again, we're kind of stuck with this, and I'm not even going to bring up another reference photo because there's really not much we can say about either of these two things. You know, without more information, which leads us into the last thing, obviously, which is this. Now, my friend is a firearms instructor, and he looked at this and said, "You know what that looks like to me is basically two shell casings that have been kind of put together." And I have he pulled a bunch of bullets or shells off the range for me that he thought were the same sort of caliber-ish, and said, you know, see, like they're I mean, these are more modern versions, they've been updated, but this could be what this is. So the reason why I'm kind of not just brushing over this one going, well, you know, it's probably who knows what this is again, is that this could be what this is. This could be a shell casing of some kind, or two shells that have been put together or taped together or welded together or whatever the case may be. You know, it could be something completely different, but it's a good start. And when I was looking at similar calibers online, you know, you can kind of see there's the rim here, and then there'd be the firing pins, you know, or the firing cap or whatever in there, you know, which would be right there. So that could be what that is. But again, these episode 6 Greeblies are really just a huge mystery. There's like, nobody knows what any of them are. This is the best guess we have based on Anovos. If they're any bit accurate at all, that's kind of what we have. I mean, we've got lots of reference photos, but none of them give any better indication of what they are. Oh, hold a sec. Thing I do want to mention, on my notes here. Anovos seems to have made a bit of an idealized version of this. If you look at this side here, and this, I wish there was a better picture. It's very, like, you know, they've done the same thing they've done with the carburetor. They've kind of just blocked off a bunch of stuff, so it makes it a little bit difficult. But if we look at this this image here, I guess I can't zoom in anymore. If we look at this image here, you can see that there's actually a ridge here. I wanted to mention this because it's one of the things I find inaccurate on the Anovos one. There's some kind of ridge there that gives a little bit of extra detail. It's not on the Anovos one, so just something to keep in mind. You might want to custom build that in there with a little, you know, a bit of plastic or something. So, with that said, I'm going to keep that open because we're going to come to that. With that said, I said it again. See? At least I'm catching myself this time. Jeez. Okay, so episode 7. Let's get in here. Get these open. There we go. Episode 7. Now, there's not much to say about episode 7 because there are only 2 Greeblies in the entire holster. There's no disc. There's no droid collar. There's just these white boxes again and a canister. Very much like episode 4. The difference is that this canister is not a sparklets canister. It looks like with, as I mentioned before numerous times, as search and rescue, we have inflatable PFDs that we can use sometimes, and they have big CO2 cartridges on there that look very similar to that. There's CO2 cartridges, could be from paintball It could be from modern sparklets, like modern soda canisters, or something CO2 like a PFD or something like that. The exact manufacturer of what that is, no idea. It's something I haven't even looked into. I am sure that anybody that is in whatever industry this comes out of would be able to instantly look at that and say, yes, that's a blah 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 from blah blah blah, and it would be easy to track down. But we haven't had the time like we have with the Sparklets one to kind of get it around the internet and stuff like that, so enough people can kind of see it. But it's a mystery that needs to be solved. It's obviously something that we could probably get. I don't believe it's probably a vintage one. It could be, but it's probably just a modern CO2 cartridge that they threw in there. It's a lot longer than the episode 4 one. So it's just, we need to find that. Again, we come back to the white boxes, which nobody knows. No idea what they are. But you can see that they could end here, just like so. The Anovos ones could be. It would be really awesome to me if these were the ones from episode 4, which means that if they are, then they're still kicking around, which is awesome. And 2, it means that anybody who can get close enough to this holster and get some really good reference photos, we may have a chance of actually sourcing them down. So, because the fact that they even exist is awesome. So, episode 7, only two different versions, or 2 different Greeblies, and we just need to find them. So there's not much I can say about that. I wish there was more I could say, more information I could give you guys, but I just don't have that information yet. So let's go on. Let's go on to the droid collar. Now we can get rid of episode 7 completely because there are no droid collar. However, let's bring up the droid collar, and this is what I'm talking about, the droid collar. Okay, so this here is a Cobalt. It's German. It's a German company. They were a German company. They don't exist anymore. My German wife told me how to say it. Cobalt. It's basically cobalt, kind of. And she told me that it means troll or goblin in German. So that's kind of an interesting little tidbit of information for you to sort of take. But these are flashes from, as you can see, an old vintage camera. And they took a bunch of them, they stripped a bunch of stuff off, they threw them in the holsters and said, that's a thing, that's a droid collar. The problem for holster builders such as ourselves is that there are a ton of different varieties out there. Now, if I can actually find that image I was looking at before. Oh man, here we go. I'd love to give credit to the person who owns these because I found it on Google, but it gives a really good indication of the different varieties of what is a cobalt, the different ones are available, and it makes it a little bit difficult for us as holster builders because it's very easy to find one of the, you go on eBay and you type this in and you're like, oh, nobody's gonna have one available. You find one, it's like $10 and you're like, what? I found the best deal ever, and you feel so awesome, and then you get it home or you get it delivered and you pull open the box and you're like, sweet, I got the most accurate droid collar ever, and you realize that you got one of the varieties that is totally inaccurate and it doesn't work and doesn't look right, and you just feel cheated. So finding the right one for the right holster is a bit of a challenge, because if we look at Here's another one. Just look at these in here, and you can see that the variation between, you know, they've got different rings on the top. They've got this one here. You've got different sized ones. This one, you know, silver opposed to black. Excuse me. You've got, you know, this little red button here, which isn't on this one, and you've got a bunch of little things. You know, if you look here, there's these two rivets. There's one right next to that one where these ones are spaced apart, and you can see that here as well. There's ones with really lots of texture, not so much texture. Finding the most accurate one for your holster is a challenge, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about that today because I think that these droid collars are a stream in and of itself. I think there's lots of great information out there that will help you pick the best one and make sure that if you're looking for a genuine one that you can find it. But we can go over it a little bit today and just give you some thoughts about which ones to look for. This, excuse me, this is the episode 6 one. I'm not sure who put this in here or what this even is. It is very odd. It's a very odd one. It has a bunch of extra stuff on it. It's got like the plug at the front here, and still has the peg. It's just something to keep. I'm not going to talk too much about this because I want to research a little bit more before I do. So, but just keep in mind that that one's a little bit odd. But let's go to. I've already looked at that. Here we go. Here's that one. Here's that same one. It's got a plug. It's got this big giant thing on here. So to look at that a little bit more. I'm going to close that down. I want to deal with it. Don't think we have any more to do with KMan. What's that one? Okay, I'm going to stop opening that. How about that? Maybe I closed it. So that would be annoying. Okay, well, that's okay. So we've got, if we look at, I am sure I had an open here before. I bear with me because I think it's important that I find this one and open it for you guys, because there's a really big difference between two of these, and it's a good starting point for when you start with yours. Okay, so here is the episode 4, and if you look at this, and we'll just do a general, and like I say, we'll get into this more on a different day, but in general, you have, this one has a disc, and they come. You can sort of see on the bottom here, there's this little threaded, and the disc would screw into there. And on episode 4, that you get out of here. I'm tired of looking. On episode 4, you can see that disc is still there. So if you have access to, or if you are going to order one, let's just look at this. Sorry, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I'm kind of a little bit all over the place, but you've got a disc, and then these two rivets are very close together, and you can see, I think I showed you on that other one, there's ones that far apart, and then there's ones that are close together. This one close together. No, I don't think that this is the one with the red button, but that's in okay, so episode 5, you can see that disc isn't there, and I've got other photos that show that as well, but that disc is not there. So this is probably a different version than this one, and I've got both of them sort of sorted out. If you look at the two here, this one is probably the A New Hope episode 4 one, and this one is probably the episode 5. And I believe somebody's going to correct me. I'm stumbling a little bit here because I remember researching these like huge back about last year sometime, and I knew everything probably there was to know about these, but after not having looked at them for a while, I'm a little confused about which one is which. So you know, that's why I'm trying to remember all the little details that I can, and I'm trying to think about how much detail to give you guys today, opposed to, you know, doing a different stream and going into it. But let's just maybe take a quick step back and just say, in general, there are different versions for the different holsters, and finding out which version you want to put in there means a little bit of research to get that sorted out, to make sure you get the right one. And you know, like I say, there are differences. There's lots of differences out there from the two different ones. So you're going to have to do a little bit of research. There's lots of great forums on the RPF and on the Rebel Legion about these. So if you're interested in about it before I get to the stream, by all means go and start looking at that information and figure out, you know, the differences between them and stuff. But that's sort of an overview of that, what they are, you know, that there's differences, that you need to be aware of those differences if you're looking for accuracy and all that. One last thing I'm going to mention is that people tend to have issues with these things falling out. The little clip on the holster that keeps these in there, this little clip here, it's not a very good design, and I suspect if you look at the episode 6 costume, it's been kind of wrapped on there with fishing line, and I think they probably did something similar on set too, because, or glued it in place or something, because I mean, this thing is going to fly out the minute it gets bumped and all this kind of stuff. So from a cosplay perspective, my advice is you may want to consider foregoing accuracy a little bit to try to figure out a way to keep this thing from flying out of there. Whether it be using rare earth magnets or wire or some other means of keeping it from coming out of there. That's my advice, is to think about something like that, because I'm going to do it with mine. I know that thing's not going to last 5 seconds in there at a convention, and if somebody swipes it, it's going to make me really mad. So, something to keep in mind. This is the episode 6 droid collar. You can see that the disc is not on the bottom here as well. So it could be the one from episode 4. So with that said, let's get rid of these and go on to the last Greebly of the day, which is the disc. Now, the disc is what I'm talking about, and is this on the side of the holster. Now, it's on the side of episode 4, 5, and 6, but not 7. And let me bring this up here. I want to show you guys something. End up showing something I don't want to you guys. So this is actually a perfect. Okay. So this disc on the side here, I've mentioned this before, but I want to mention it again because I think it's a really funny story. Is a friend of mine, I was down in his shop at the University of Victoria here, and he was looking at my project, you know, giving himself a bit of a chuckle that I was doing this project. in general, but he was looking at these photos that I was showing him and going, well, you know, could you manufacture this? You know, and he said, well, yeah, absolutely, it'd be nothing to make this. Then he's like, you know what that looks like? It looks like a bud buster. And I said, what is a bud buster? I mean, this guy, as far as I know, he doesn't do drugs or anything. So why he would know this, I have no idea. But he said it's a sort of a little thing that people that smoke marijuana use to grind up the leaves or whatever. And I don't know how he knew this, but I went home and I looked online, and sure enough, if you look at this from the other side, the other direction, it looks, you know, very, very similar. And there's lots of different ones. And if you look at vintage versions of these, it looks exactly like what it would be. And honestly, it makes total and complete sense that the guys in the, you know, the props department making this holster back in the day in 1977 would get a huge chuckle out of putting a bud buster on the side of these holsters. I mean, it just, you know, come on. 1977 in the UK, I mean, yeah. So it's a pretty good possibility that that's what this is a bud buster. Now, whether it was a commercially made one that, you know, they bought in a local shop, or whether it was just something that they manufactured for themselves in the, you know, in the shop, no one will ever know. I don't think we'll ever find out exactly which one it is. It doesn't really matter, because manufacturing them from a nice piece of aluminum is a much better option. That being said, there we go. I said that being said again. These are the current offerings from a vendor or somebody by the name of Elvis Trooper. They are pretty much the standard go-to discs for all the holster. I am convinced that these are the ones you find on most of the commercial holsters that you buy, including the Anovos, I believe. I could be wrong. Let's just go take a quick look. See if we can't see. Let's come up to the top here. I mean, maybe this one looks like it is. It's the same one. Like, it's probably one from Elvis Trooper, and this may be as well. I've mentioned this before, and these are a great disc. Obviously, Elvis Trooper puts in a ton of effort, knows what they're doing, and makes them look really nice and clean and crisp, but they're not correct. And let me just take 2 seconds to show you why. If you look at the episode 5 version here, you can see that the distance between these holes and the edge of this are much greater than here, right? The placement of these is just in a totally different way. The center bit as well is much smaller than the 347 drop frames. We were okay. Hopefully we're okay. I'm not sure if anybody noticed where we might have dropped frames. Let me know. Anyway, you can see the difference between the two quite, and even the ridge around the side. These ones are very deep comparative to these ones. These just a nice little ridge around the side here. You can see it's not very deep at all. So while these are nice, they're not very accurate in terms of the shape and the hole placement and all that kind of stuff. As well as that, I did some research myself last year, and what I did was I looked at I took the buttons on the holsters, on all the holsters, and I looked at the different buttons and I said, okay, these are the size of the buttons. these are standard size buttons, so you know they're not going to be custom made buttons. They're not going to they're going to be standard, and buttons have been quite standard for quite a long time. So once you get the right, and what I did was I took one button and I photoshopped a bunch on various different reference photos, and I said, okay, these, if this amount of buttons fit in this 2-inch piece of leather, then that means that the buttons have to be 16 millimeters or whatever the case may be. And so I took that and I said, okay, if 2 buttons are this size, then this droid collar is going to, or this disc is going to fit within that. And what I realized was that if I go back to here, Elvis Troopers are, I believe, 1.25 inches in diameter. And when I looked at mine and modeled it up and used my reference, I've got 1.8 or 1.1875. So quite a bit smaller than that, which totally, to me, when I take this and put it on to my reference photos, it lines up perfectly, in my opinion. So that's the one thing that that I think is inaccurate on a lot of the ones out there that you'll find, is that I think the discs are too big. The other thing is that the discs for all the different versions of them are all different thicknesses as well. So if you look at the episode 4 and 5 and 6, and you can see this is episode 6, this one's totally crazy, and I'm not sure what's going on with this one, but they're all different thicknesses as well. So it's something you have to be aware of when you're trying to fit the right, when you're making your own holster and you're fitting the discs there. You know, you want to make sure that you get the right one. Now, I am going to, when you get your holster pattern and you get your 3D, you'll be able to 3D print your own, which will be accurate. But I am going to do a run of actual machined ones out of aluminum that are what I believe to be as closely, as closely as accurate as I can to these ones here, and the episode 4 ones as well. So those will be coming. They'll be in a separate thing. I'm not sure if I'll do you know, like a Boba Det thing where I gauge interest and, you know, do a run of however many people prepay or, you know, half pay or whatever the case may be, and then send those out. But that's coming in the future. We'll get to that point. You know, because I don't want a 3D printed one on my holster. I want a nice aluminum one. So I'll be making those for myself. So I may as well make a bunch for you guys as well. So anyway, those are the discs. This is the episode 5 that we're looking at, just as a reminder. And that's really all the Greeblies on all the different holsters. And as much information as I know about them, and I realize, and I have to apologize that near the end of this kind of thing, I zoned out a little bit about, you know, the different information and stuff, because I've got some notes and I was kind of struggling today. I was trying to catch up, you know, right before I went live here. So some of my notes near the end are a little bit like sparse. I'm kind of going a bit more off memory, so you probably noticed that. But that's generally as much information as I know, with more on the droid collar and a little bit more on the discs that I've gathered throughout the last, you know, couple of years of working on this project. I'm hoping that today gave you guys a bit of a better understanding of the Greeblies. It's weird because Greeblies the Greeblies for these holsters are kind of one of the things that sort of almost get shoved to the side, I think, until the very last minute when you're like, oh yeah, I need to put some Greeblies in there. But they're really important, and there's a lot of really cool mysteries with them that are still really need to be solved. And I think that, you know, the holsters themselves are coming to the point in my project where there's not much more that I can add with the information that I have, and it's just really just getting them the patterns completed, putting them into those books and getting them out to you guys. But the Greeblies are just one of those things where they're still, it's in, you know, there's lots of information to be found still, and if anybody wants to start, you know, getting some gears going or get some wheels turning and seeing if we could figure out, you know, how to get our hands on some of the actual props, or somebody that can talk to somebody's cousin or something that can go down there and get some really high quality photos, that would be awesome. So anyway, something to think about. And that I think is all I have for you guys today. I think I streamed for almost maybe an hour and a half, almost 2 hours maybe. So hopefully it made up for a little bit for me not being here the last 2 weeks. I want to thank everybody for sticking in with having the patience here. I hope Monday works better for everybody. I'm also going to, I think, start a Thursday or Friday stream. That's going to be other projects right away here, because there's lots of other ones on the you know, on the table over there that I want to sort of get going. And okay, so J-Hugs dropped a few frames when I was going. Okay, J-Hugs had just said in chat here that a few frames dropped when I went to the Budbuster reference photo. So hopefully, hopefully you guys got the gist of it. J-Hugs, you can sort of mention if you need anything kind of, you know, reiterated a little bit. I can go back for a second if you need to. But thanks for checking it out, J-Hugs. I appreciate it. I appreciate you checking it out, and it's nice to know there's people out there watching. So thanks again to everybody. I want to thank Arling Bodie specifically for supporting me on Patreon this month. Much appreciated. It really helps me, you know, spend more time on these projects and stuff. And then thanks to everyone else. J-Hugs, thanks for checking out the stream. Thanks to KMan for the great thread. Thanks to Captain Solo 77 for that episode 7 information, and thanks to Egon for contacting me and getting me thinking about the holster being the same for episode 4 and 6. That's an interesting theory, and I think we need to explain it or explore it a bit more. Next week, I'm not too sure what I'm going to do next week. I'm kind of getting to the point in this project where there's a bit of a transition where it's time to almost start working. The pattern is getting very close to being done. The pattern is getting very close to being done. I just need to get it into the book. I'm not sure if I'm going to stream the book for you guys. Like, what I mean is, I'm not sure you guys want to sit there and watch me just kind of type. And I can't talk while I type, you know, stuff. So it might be a little bit... maybe I'll do an hour work thing where I'll go through the book and you guys can kind of see what's going on with it again and see where things are at and see how I work and get the pattern in there. But blah, blah, blah. We'll figure that out. I'm just rambling at this point. So, yeah. So next week, I'm not sure what we'll do. I may go into either the droid collar more specifically and do a nice hour and just really get into that information. Or I may spend some time going over the belts, because actually we haven't talked about too much about the actual belts and the placement of some of the snaps and how those belts curve around and how they attach and all that kind of stuff. So maybe we'll do a little bit on that. But other than that, thanks again to everybody. It's a great stream, I think. And we'll see you next week. All right. See ya.